Hey everyone, what's up? How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? It is Sam Whitfield, host of the Whitfield Analysis, and as always, it's time to get the show started. But of course, a few words before we start the podcast. Want to give a quick shout out to the Unbearables community and Owen Benjamin in general. Great guy, seems like, from the exchanges I've had with him on Twitter. I want to thank the Unbearables community for welcoming me into the, I guess, are bears pack animals or a tribe, or I don't know what it's called, but regardless, thank you for welcoming me into the club. Hashtag not a cult. And for the rest of you ladies and gentlemen who don't know what I'm talking about, you'll find out on the podcast. Anyway, quick couple of announcements. In the next few weeks, I will be arranging to have guests on. I know I say that at the beginning of every episode, but this time it is for real, ladies and gentlemen. You gotta believe me, it's for real this time. I'm going to be having Owen Benjamin himself on the podcast in a few weeks. He actually did DM me back today. But I don't know if he saw my email address. So we'll see. I asked him to email me when it was convenient for him, so I'm thinking he'll do that. But if he doesn't, I'll keep harassing him. He is open to doing the podcast, though. I know that. It's just a matter of when. And also, folks, I'll be having one of the page administrators from the well-known Facebook page, God Emperor Trump, on to discuss how Facebook has been centering his podcast on in the next few weeks. Other than that, as always, you can go to AmericanWatchman.org for all of the articles there. You can go to thesamwhitfield.com for my personal blog and for everything else pertaining to this podcast. And other than that, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show. It's the end of the month. Happy Easter in advance to all of you. Hope you guys are having a great holiday with your families. If you're listening to this during the week, I hope your week is going okay. All right, without further ado, let's start the show. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. At least I think we are. Yep, we're live officially. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live here from NGC Studios here in South Florida, brought to you by AmericanWatchman.org, and I want to thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Let me just tweet out the link that we are officially live, and then I'll get the show started, because I have a pretty interesting show for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, today is the last day of the month. Can you believe it? Tomorrow is April Fool's Day, although coincidentally it's also Easter, which is the more important holiday, obviously, with it being the day that our Lord and Savior rose again from the dead. But, that is kind of funny in a way that, two holidays fall on the same day. I'm sure that's just coincidence of the calendar, but, yeah, it's interesting to say the least. Okay. Hold on. For those of you watching the live stream, I apologize. I'm tweeting out the live stream link because none of my stuff is automated to do that. At least not on the end of Twitter. So okay. All right, yeah, we're here. And, wow, we already have 7 people in the stream already. So, we're on fire tonight. So, once again, folks, welcome to the Whitfield Report. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield. Wrapping up the end of the month. Today is March 31st, 2018. And, folks, I just have to say that the month is flying by here, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, really, the whole year is, right? I feel like we just started the year. I feel like January was last week, and now we're already headed into April. That's a bit nuts. But I suppose that's what happens when you've been productive. The year just flies by. Anyway, folks, we have a great show here tonight. I want to thank all the unbearables from Owen Benjamin's community for joining us tonight. And I also want to thank our friends over at the Rowdy Conservatives page for promoting us and sharing this live stream with us. As always, you can visit the website at thesamwhitfield.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes by going to anchor.fm/Whitfield Report. You can find the links to the podcast feeds there. And you can follow me on Twitter at SamW_NGC. You can follow me on gab.ai at Sam Whitfield. And yeah, that just about does it for all the promotional stuff. So let's just dive in, folks. By the way, if you're on Facebook, you can also live chat with me and give some reactions. So feel free to comment on anything I say during tonight's stream. Alright, so over the last few weeks on the show, I've been talking about David Hogg and the Parkland shooting protests. And there were a couple of things that really stood out to me this week. And I'm sure that most of you, ladies and gentlemen, are sick of hearing about Parkland by now. I know a lot of you are sick of David Hogg in general. So I promise that this will most likely be the last show that we do on David Hogg. Thank you, Susan. Susan writes, "You are a very composed young man." Well, thank you. Anyway, I suppose this will be the last show that we do on David Hogg, but the one thing I really want to dive into tonight is why are these Parkland school kids so why are they in the media spotlight right now, folks? That's one of the main things I want to focus on for tonight's show. And I covered this a little bit last week in the broadcast, but I only briefly covered it because last week was the 10-year anniversary of me doing podcasting, so that was a big deal, so we covered that. But a lot of people are sick of the Parkland school kids, and a lot of people are asking, well, Sam, why are all the Parkland school it's former producer Jeff. He's actually taken over the Facebook page, and yeah, I forgot I made it. Jeff, I forgot I made you an admin of the page, so we may have to fix that. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, the reason why these Parkland kids, sorry for all the tangents, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why the Parkland victims, I think, are so recognized in the news is obviously the Parkland school shooting was a very big event, and it was obviously tragic. It should not have occurred. And again, I blame Sheriff Israel and the Parkland deputy and just the police department. They're the ones responsible for the debacle. But the fact remains that David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez and all of these kids out there, they've become big voices. Like or not, that's just the way things have gone. Now, I've tried to be diplomatic over the past month and saying, yeah, these kids have a right to speak, and I believe that they do still. But I've also been very critical of David Hogg over the past few weeks, not only over his... I've been less critical of his viewpoints, more critical of the fact of I feel that he's been extremely divisive and not at all helping the situation. If anything, I think he's hurting something. He's hurting the dialogue, right? Last week I played the clip of him being just completely foul-mouthed during that interview, saying, fuck Governor Scott, fuck Congress, and they're going to be out of a job, and we're going to put the NRA out of a job too. The NRA had absolutely nothing to do with the shooting. But, I mean, obviously David Hogg, there are some people who have thought that he's being coached, and part of me believes that that might be true as well, but then another part of me thinks that he might be doing this all on his own. The reason why I think he's being coached is because anytime someone actually offers to confront him on the issue of gun control and the Second Amendment and debate him, he's always shied away from debates. I've invited him on this podcast for a cordial conversation. I've never heard a response back from him. The invitation is still open, by the way. But there have been a whole bunch of young conservatives, and not even particularly young conservatives necessarily, but just young commentators who have invited him on to have a civil conversation about both sides of the issue, and he hasn't taken us up on the offer. And my theory as to in what way he's being controlled is I think the left really saw how many young conservatives came out of the woodwork during the 2016 election, right? There used to be like a meme from 2008 to 2012, and when I mean meme, I don't mean like a graphical meme like we know now. I mean in the sense that young conservatives were kind of an internet meme. we didn't really, it wasn't really thought that we existed prior to 2016. College Republicans, those were a thing of the past. Up until the 2016 election. And with the whole Babes for Trump movement and just millennials for Trump, we really showed that young conservatives really have a voice here in America. And we made ourselves known through social media and through basically the power of the internet, right? So, did you really think we were going to show up and then just dominate the internet completely? No, I knew it was a matter of time before the left decided, well, we need to find our own young activists and put them up on the stage. So, I believe that after the Parkland school shooting, they took a look at David Hogg and they took a look at Emma Gonzalez and they said, okay, these kids also believe in gun control, so why don't we put them up on, why don't we promote them, why don't we give them backing and funding, and we can basically create our own youth wing, so to speak, for the anti-gun movement, right? So that's what they did. And that's where we're at right now. And because the mainstream media is pretty much in bed with the left and with the anti-gun lobby, it's not all that surprising to me that these kids are getting airtime on CNN, that they're getting airtime on MSNBC, mostly CNN, but I know they've been on a few other networks. We really shouldn't be surprised by any of this. And I have been critical of David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez because I think in a lot of ways they're acting like bullies, and as it's turned out, I guess in the past few weeks we've now found out that Emma Gonzalez pretty much admitted to harassing the shooter. I'm not saying that necessarily justifies the fact that she that Cruz or whatever his name is committed the shooting. I'm not justifying that at all. But what I am saying is it kind of changes the perspective now that, yeah, he was the shooter, but this leads back to the thing of this isn't a gun control problem. This is a mental health problem, and it's a problem of people being indecent to each other. In fact, let me pull up. I had an article here which pretty much kind of proved my, which pretty much, proves this. Let's see. So anyway, so no one should be surprised that the Parkland kids, that some of them came out of the woodwork in favor of gun control and against Trump. We knew that was going to happen. Yeah, it's just I'm not surprised. Now, this is interesting. What a fact! This just came up. They're actually saying that Emma Gonzalez did not bully the school shooter. I'll pull up this But I mean, the point still remains that these kids are definitely activists, and I don't, as I've always said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't mind that they're out there. I think that they're misinformed, but I've never had a problem with the fact that they were out there expressing their First Amendment rights. Okay, now, what I do have a problem with, David Hogg has brought up the fact over the last few weeks that he has had troubles. That he has had trouble with getting accepted into schools, and he has brought this up. And first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I just have to say this. I'm not really even sure why he's bringing up the fact that he's having problems getting into school. What does that have to do with anything relating to the shooting? Okay, why do people even care about whether or not he's getting admitted into college? Like, I'm sure his family and friends, care. I'm sure the immediate, community should care. But why are journalists, and why is he talking about the fact that he isn't getting admitted to colleges, that some colleges are rejecting him based on his political activism? It's kind of the fact that his college admissions have become a national talking point all of a sudden. It's kind of like, so what? And that is exactly what Laura Ingraham was basically trying to say when she said that David Hogg was complaining. She wasn't bullying him. She was just saying that people get rejected from colleges all the time. Why are you whining? This has nothing to do with the shooting. And yet the media pin this as, oh, Laura Ingraham is attacking David Hogg. She's attacking a school shooting survivor, and we need to boycott her and boycott her advertisers. Right? She didn't say anything that contradict. I don't think she said anything that controversial at all. David Hogg's college applications shouldn't be part of the national conversation. But now she's in peril. And it's become a mess. Meanwhile, an MSNBC contributor has actually criticized Kyle Koshoff and said, I don't really like you. Right? So Kyle Koshoff is getting harassed by MSNBC contributors, and yet no one's calling for this guy to be fired. No one in the mainstream media anyway. Ben Shapiro has an interesting take on this. I know I've been playing clips from him a lot lately, but in regards to the fact that David Hogg has just become a train wreck, Ben Shapiro has made some points which I think are very well put as to the whole David Hogg phenomenon. This was from Thursday's episode of the Ben Shapiro Podcast. For those of you watching on video, that yes, it is a video, but it's mainly audio, so there are just photos, and then for those of you listening on the audio podcast later on, you'll just hear the audio, obviously. So this is Ben Shapiro talking about the whole, basically David Hogg and the Parkland school activists, and how this has basically become a giant media crapshoot. Okay, cut number 1, go.
The fallout over the Parkland shooting continues, and the fallout from the media continues. So we've been told this story, which is that all the Parkland survivors have innate moral authority and can speak on any issue without any criticism. Now, I have said over and over and over on this program, listen to every episode since Parkland, I've said these kids have a right to speak out. Of course they have a right to speak out. This is America. When I was 17 years old, I had a syndicated columnist. But this comes with a caveat. The caveat is you will get criticized. People will criticize you. People will pick apart what you are saying publicly, especially when you're the type of person who goes on national television and suggests that all those who disagree with you are actually akin to child murderers. If you do that, it turns out people get pissed off. Okay, but the media have decided that any criticism of these kids whatsoever, not their right to speak, not their expertise, right? If you criticize the stuff they are saying, if you say what they are saying is wrong, or if you say, I don't think that they are conducting themselves properly publicly, right? If you say that sort of stuff, then you are a hater. Then you are brutal. Then you are doing something terrible.
Okay, a couple of things I want to point out here, because Ben Shapiro is absolutely right about this point, ladies and gentlemen. Look, I've been doing political podcasting since I was 13 years old. Okay? I've been a public figure for a long time now. Maybe not necessarily the most famous popular figure, maybe not even one with a large following, I'll admit that, but I've put myself out there in the public eye, and I've been criticized by my peers, I've been criticized by adults, and I've been criticized by people 4 and 5 times my age. Okay? A lot of it either from the left or sometimes on the right has mostly been, criticisms of my political views and actual debate points. I will say that. I have had a few bullies, people who have harassed me, but even so, I haven't had that many. Over the years. I think Keith Olbermann was mainly the only big public figure who harassed me on Twitter once, and, well, I mean, I dealt with him pretty well, if I do say so myself. At any rate, yeah, Ben Shapiro is absolutely right. Even if you're young, the fact that you're putting yourself out there for, and saying public thing does open you up to scrutiny, and it is legitimate. So that's his first point I agree with. So continuing on.
Okay, I don't understand why this should be the case. Really, in public life, everyone gets criticized. It's part of the way this works. And when you're speaking on issues of deep public importance, fundamental issues to American liberty and, frankly, human liberty, like should you have the right to keep and bear arms, then passions are going to run high. And not only are passions going to run high, people have not only every right, but every responsibility to speak out against perspectives that they think are bad. And I think a lot of what these kids have been saying is wrong, non-factual. I think some of what they've been saying is immoral when they suggest that Marco Rubio is akin to the shooter in Parkland. And when they say that Dana Lash is a murderer with blood on her hands, this stuff is disgusting. And not only do I have every right, I have every moral obligation to speak up against it because it's gross. Okay, but that's not how the media have treated this. So CNN tweeted this out about David Hogg. David Hogg is, of course, the guy who's probably become the most famous of these Parkland survivors. Emma Gonzalez is the other one who's really gained a lot of credibility. She's very good at media. Emma Gonzalez, I think, really knows how to handle herself. David Hogg, not so much. He thinks that the sort of Che Guevara attitude, the fist in the air thing that you're seeing here, is what's going to win the day, that anger wins the day. Emma Gonzalez understands that anger doesn't win the day. She's much better at this than David Hogg. Just from a purely political point of view, if you're going to pick one of those two people to run for office, there's no doubt in my mind you run Emma Gonzalez, not David Hogg. In any case, the media have decided that David Hogg's voice is deeply important and that he should be booked on every show. So he's been on CNN 1,000 times at this point. And this is what CNN tweeted out yesterday, quote, "A brief history of how Parkland survivor David Hogg keeps schooling lawmakers on social media." Yeah, that sounds like objective journalism to me. Okay, we here at the Daily Wire, we're not objective. So when we say that somebody is schooling somebody else, you can assume that we're conservative. And we're saying that a conservative is schooling a leftist. Why? Because we are a conservative website, and we make that obvious and known. But CNN is supposed to be objective. Does that sound like an objective headline to you? A brief history of how Parkland survivor David Hogg keeps schooling lawmakers on social media? Of course not. Well, the big controversy that's broken out over David Hogg in the last 24 hours concerns Laura Ingraham. So Laura retweeted a piece that was on our website. The piece that was on our website about David Hogg being rejected by certain colleges originally appeared at TMZ. So the story did not originate with us. And it really only originated with David Hogg because he was interviewed by TMZ somewhere and he started discussing which colleges he had gotten into. So we begin with what David Hogg actually said about not getting into colleges. And there are a couple ways of reading this, and I want to be fair to him. So here's what the
Okay, before we break down that clip, I mean, before Ben Shapiro gets into that interview with TMZ, okay, I want to point out again, really, and who cares what colleges this kid gets into, right? Other than him and the immediate community, like, who cares? Right? Millions of high school seniors across the country, every year, they're going through this. And this is that time of year, you know, senior year is that time of year when high school seniors apply to colleges and, you know, get accepted and get rejected. And look, I know it's not easy. I applied to colleges and I got rejected from some of them. Actually, back when I was in Colorado, I got accepted by my first choice of schools in Colorado, but wound up, you know, going to school here in Florida instead. But even so, you know, I got rejected from schools here, and you know, I had to end up going to a community college out here, which, you know, is fine. But again, you know, who cares? The high school senior, you know, approved or rejected thing, that always happens to kids across the country, no matter what. And so why is this a big national thing? Well, it's because David Hogg has made it as such, and he's probably trying to leverage his popularity to try and influence some of these colleges to letting him in. And if that's the case, I'm actually glad that they've rejected him from these colleges. Anyway, moving on.
Dead.
It's not been too great for me and some of the other members of the movement, like Ryan Deitch. We got rejected from we got rejected from UCLA, and I got rejected from UCLA and UCSD. So it's been kind of annoying having to deal with that and everything else that's been going on. But at this point, I was, you know, we're changing the world. We're too busy. Right now, it's too hard to focus on that. It is absolutely disappointing. But at this point, we're already changing the world. If colleges want to support us in that, great. If they don't, doesn't matter. We're still going to change the world.
Okay. One thing I'd like to point out before we get to Ben's analysis on this, and for those who are looking in the live stream, I know looking at Ben's face, especially when it's all pixelated like this, isn't the most appealing thing. I get that, but just focus on me. I'm in the lower left-hand corner. Okay? See, we've heard about David Hogg being rejected from colleges for the past few weeks, but has he ever explained to us why he's been rejected? Okay, now granted, I know that some colleges don't always explain that in their rejection letter. Some of them do, some of them don't, from what I remember. But who knows? He might not have had the grades to get in. They might not like the fact that he's such a political activist and, could draw attention to him. Could be for any number of reasons, ladies and gentlemen. So again, why is he tying this into the fact that this is because they're changing the world? Okay? I never thought I would praise UCLA Berkeley or any of the UCLA colleges, but if they're rejecting him because he's an activist and because they're worried about him causing a frenzy on campus, I've got no problem with that. That is actually legit in my... They've decided to do that. By the way, folks, I just switched my mic over to my actual podcast microphone. So I've been doing this podcast halfway through it on my regular mic, so I apologize. But yeah, let's continue on with Shapiro's analysis.
His comments here could have been read in a couple of different ways. The part that you see the slash through, the part where that's cut out there, is where David Hogg says, listen, a lot of people don't actually get into colleges, right? It's not super unpredictable. A lot of people in my class didn't get into a lot of colleges. There are a lot of people who can't afford to go to college. All of that is true. And for the first 2/3 of this comment, I'm actually in agreement. David Hogg is handling this with class. That last comment there where he says that if colleges want to help us in our crusade, great. If not, then we're still changing the world. This is where I have a bit of trouble, because the implication is where and listen, he's speaking off the cuff, so maybe it's just a mistake. But the implication of what he's saying is the reason that colleges are not letting him in is not because he wasn't qualified. They're not letting him in because of his activism, which of course would be incredibly silly, right? There is no question that the top leaders of this movement will end up going to fantastic graduate schools, specifically because they are top leaders of this movement, right? Political activism on the left is not going to come back and bite you, right? It's the ultimate extracurricular activity for most college administrators. My guess is that if he had sent in his applications right now, as opposed to 6 months ago, then he would be admitted to a lot of these schools. But he's getting these rejections now or 2 weeks ago in the middle of all of this. It's not like they were considering him 5 minutes ago. They were considering him 4 months ago. They probably don't even remember seeing his application, because places like UCLA get tens of thousands of applications every year. So in any case, Laura Ingraham tweets out this story, and we covered it pretty straight. It was pretty objective coverage, or at least it wasn't politically charged. And Laura tweeted this out. She tweeted, David Hogg rejected by 4 colleges to which he applied and whines about it, dinged by UCLA with a 4.1 GPA, totally predictable given acceptance rates. Hey, I don't think that this is particularly awful. Anything that Laura says here is particularly awful. Do I think that it's fair to say that he's whining about it? I think it's maybe half fair or a quarter fair. I don't totally agree with Laura's take on David Hogg's comments here. But the way David Hogg responds is what's really important here. So David Hogg responds to this relatively mild critique by saying that they should boycott Laura Ingraham. Right? So he starts immediately, like within minutes, tweeting out Laura Ingram's advertisers and saying that all these places should drop Laura Ingraham. Why? For the great sin of having suggested that he whined about not getting into college. Okay, she didn't say anything racist. She didn't say anything sexist. She didn't say David Hogg is a piece of crap. She didn't insult him personally. Like really, she was insulting his comments, right? The things that he said. He is part of the public discourse. And this is demonstrative of exactly how this game is being played now by the left. They've trot out a bunch of kids. The kids have every right to speak. Again, for the 1,000th time, the kids have every right to speak. They trot out a bunch of kids. And then if you disagree with the kids, they suggest you are attacking the kids personally. And then based on that, they say you shouldn't be on the air. And this is what David Hogg is now doing. Okay, David Hogg does not have, any sort of moral impetus to call for a full boycott of Laura Ingraham based on that tweet. She got ratioed pretty hard on Twitter, meaning that more people replied to her tweet than actually retweeted it, which is very often taken on Twitter as a sign of it was a bad tweet or something. Okay, that's fine, but boycotts? Really? And if we're really at the point in this country where you say something that's even mildly controversial and there are calls for boycotts, then we're not going to have a common culture anymore. We really aren't. Because I promise you, the right is just as capable of this as the left. The right has stayed away from it. In fact, I used to run an organization called Truth Revolt. It was a branch of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And when I ran Truth Revolt, one of our goals was to provide a mutually assured destruction. The idea was if the left was going to use boycott tactics in order to knock conservatives off the air, then we would use boycott tactics to knock leftists off the air. And then everybody would learn that boycott tactics are bad. That boycott tactics end up knocking voices off the air or destroying the profit margins for shows that are controversial. I think David Hogg should be able to speak out however he wants. I don't think that advertisers should be boycotted for praising David Hogg. I don't think any of those things. But there's this attempt to use market forces to club people with whom you politically disagree, not because they're racist or brutal or horrible, but just because you disagree. And if that becomes our politics, the entire market basis for political discourse in the country goes away, and that is going to have a significant weakening impact on the kind of voices that you're allowed to hear.
And with that, Shapiro pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, I don't see how much more clear. I mean, that's pretty much the best summary of this situation that I can think of. And again, why bring up the college application things now? And I mean, Ben also brought up the fact I hadn't even really considered this until watching that clip. But Ben does bring up the fact that many of David Hogg's applications probably went into UCLA before any of the Parkland event happened, before the shooting itself happened. Which again, unfortunately tells me that he's trying to use his his position as a public figure to influence institutions to do his bidding, which I don't think is, moral. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but I'm not surprised that he's doing that either. Okay, and for those of you over the past few weeks who think I've been overly critical of David Hogg, okay, let me just say this. I have been critical of David Hogg, but I have also been very critical of other young conservatives and of the conservative movement in general, okay? In fact, back in 2015, before the election, I actually wrote an article on my blog. You can see it right here on my website. It's called "The Flaw in the Young Conservative Youth Movement Could Be Our Undoing." And in it, I went through how young conservative activists, some of them like Jonathan Crone, Caden Cowger, and C.J. Pearson at the time, were all being praised by the conservative movement, and yet, they were being used as political pawns, and they weren't making good arguments whatsoever. So I have criticized conservatives for using kids as activists as well. And I think what we're seeing with David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez, kind of the, irrational, brash behavior from them, that's what we've seen from people like C.J. Pearson. That's the exact same type of behavior we're seeing now from liberal activists like Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg. So, bottom line to all this, folks, I think they're going to fizzle out here in the next few months. I would give it maybe to the end of the year, but, I mean, once I hate to say this, but once the next tragedy happens, whether that be like a natural disaster or another shooting, which God willing doesn't happen, but the next time some big event happens, the media is going to, forget about David Hogg, and they're going to forget about Emma Gonzalez. Why? Because the media always does that. They, look for a cause to attach themselves to, and then as soon as the conflict, or as soon as the news story within that event is done, as soon as they've sucked everything out of it that they can for their own use, well, then it's over, and they move on to the next thing. So, for all of you guys who are sick and tired of hearing about David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez, don't worry, I don't think they'll be around for much longer. Metaphorically speaking, in terms of being on the news. Alright, folks, with that in mind, I would like to spend the last few minutes of the show sharing a skit I found online. So for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you may have seen that I retweeted a whole bunch of Owen Benjamin's stuff. For those of you who don't know, Owen Benjamin is a comedian who used to be like a really big deal. Like he was a mainstream comedian. He was with Comedy Central for quite a long time, and but he recently got blacklisted last year, basically for coming out as a conservative, and then for also saying that 3-year-old kids should not be given hormones and should not be, that basically transitioning kids at like a super, super young age is an evil and horrible thing to do. And so he got blacklisted by Hollywood, and now he's kind of doing his own thing. For those of you on Twitter, you can probably see that you can see his profile, and he has this group called the Unbearables, which is basically his fan club. He does a lot of jokes involving bears and whatnot, and so the Unbearables is kind of his fan club, and those of us who are officially verified, or should I say verified, we all have bear names. So you can follow Owen Benjamin on Twitter at Owen Benjamin, and he's Big Bear, according to the Unbearables. And then I'm here. My name is my Twitter handle is still the same, at SamW_NGC. But then I now have the name Podcast Bear for the Unbearables. And it's just a really great group of people out there. For those of you, listening and watching and subscribing to my podcast, thank you guys for the support. So there's a quick shout out to the Unbearables. But I also wanted to share with you this funny skit, because I think it would be a good way to end the show. The Unbearables actually did a skit before I joined the group about gun control, and this is kind of in the style of those public service announcement commercials that celebrities like to do, saying it's time to end gun violence, or whatever the cause that celebrities are doing whenever they say it's time to do something. So this is basically like a parody of the activism commercials. It's really funny. I'll have a link to the video along with everything else in the show. But check this out. This one is called "It's Time to Listen to the Children," and this is from Owen Benjamin and the Unbearables. Enjoy.
When tragedy strikes, mainstream media always knows who to look to for guidance. The children. Nothing says solid policy like the mind of a child.
It's time to listen to the children. Because they eat their own shit.
The deadly AR-15 struck again. How deadly? If you add up all the rifle homicides in a year, right here in the U.S., it's almost half as many as people's hands, or nearly a quarter as many are killed by knives, and almost a fraction that are killed by sandwich eating. The most recent shooting killed a fraction of the people who have died texting about it while driving since it's happened, but it's a scary fraction. Sure, we've listened to experts, but what really do experts know?
I mean, what do I know? I've only worked for 25 years at the same company and raised 3 children into adulthood and put them into college. I'm an idiot. It's really time for me to listen to the children.
James Madison and Thomas Jefferson are stupid. We should replace them with Alfonso from 10th grade.
The past is the past. The Constitution was written with a stupid feather, not a modern pen, so it's meaningless. It's time for a change. It's time to listen to children. People have been listening to children a lot lately. What better time to change the chemistry of a child and sterilize them than when they're toddlers?
It's time to listen to the children. Because if your daughter wants to take as much testosterone as Rich Piana, that should be her choice. Bear Clan.
It's time. We listen to the children and give them the equal rights that they deserve. Because my 5-year-old son, Lucinda, he's transitioning. And he wants to have the same rights as everybody else. Because he's an empath, like his mother and his soy boy father. So when Lucinda wants to PMS, he's going to PMS. He wants his estrogen. He wants his testosterone. He can have whatever he wants. Lucinda gets to do whatever he wants.
It's time that we listen to kids and let them play with whatever they want.
Assume a child survives the murder gauntlet of a leftist abortion legislation, they will be born with all the knowledge our society needs.
There are children all across the world begging and pleading for us to listen to them. And they need you to give up your guns. I don't have any children of my own. Let's listen to your children.
They will hold a sign they can't even read very well in exchange for more hall privileges. This fella had to ask permission to urinate the same day he told adult professionals exactly how to run the world.
It's time. This is important. Do you think we are only protesting to get out of school or something?
Don't take my word for it. Here's a crying, unimpeachable victim for you to argue with.
Speaking of crying, who doesn't love taking orders from a crying adult man? He cries and cries, and we should all take him seriously. Like that one time, a lion got shot by a lion hunter, and he sobbed on national television. That's the type of man I look to for leadership. Only the children would understand that Tide Pod detergents are to be eaten, not used for cleaning clothes. Gotta listen to the children.
It's time to listen to the children, because my constitutional rights should be subject to a young female human who doesn't even know what she wants to wear tomorrow.
Because children know it wasn't the shooter's fault or the non-existent police response. It was the gun. Because the gun makes the bullets shoot and the shooting makes people get shot. Perfect and unarguable logic from the mouth of a child.
America, it's time to listen to our children when we decide what to eat, because we should all be using ice cream instead of milk with our cereal.
Who doesn't trust a universal mass media team who all say exactly the same thing, despite most people disagreeing with them? These kids are showing everyone how they can count. 0. Let's hear what they have to say about policy. If guns are responsible for the shooting, and we should take everyone's guns to stop shootings, what was really responsible for Harvey Weinstein's rapes? You guessed it, the penis. It's time for change.
Life is so much better now that I don't have a dick. Instead of raping, I bake cookies.
They haven't been polluted by life experience or education or making an actual contribution to society.
My name is Scott Papanofiolo, and this is my AR-15. When Virginia Tech happened, I told my ex-wife, whose couch I was sleeping on, that I would gladly give up my AR-15 and forego the sacred covenant between God and man so that our children could be saved by the government.
It's time we start listening to the children because they know this is an AR-15.
It's time to start listening to the children. These little bastards have learned so much by closing their minds to all the opposition arguments, thereby having the wisdom to tell us all what to do.
Listen to the children, because they're children.
Hello, Badger people. We must ban the guns. Bearded dragons don't have guns, and you can see how peaceful they are. If we ban guns, we can be peaceful. Peaceful like the bearded dragons. It's...
Folks, that was, for those of you, watching on the, live stream or on the video archive later, you might have seen me, I cracked up a few times there, but, for those of you listening on the audio, again, Owen Benjamin and the Unbearables are, just really hilarious, and I haven't really seen anyone do a skit yet on, the Parkland school activist, but this was a good one, so well done. And also hello to our longtime friend Eric Parrish shows, who decided to tune in right at the end of the show. But no, seriously, Eric, we do love you. I'm just wondering though, why couldn't you have shown up like 50 minutes earlier? But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that just about wraps up the show. Oh, darn it, I did not mean to, my iPhone started playing music. So, anyway, I did pronounce your name right, Eric. How about that? Anyway though, so ladies and gentlemen, we've covered a lot of topics, and next week I promise I'm going to try and get another guest on, the podcast here soon, because I've been doing this, podcast solo for a while. I haven't had any guests on for a while, and I feel like I'm at the point, admittedly, where I'm starting to run out of things to talk about on my own. So trust me, I will get a guest on here soon. I've actually been talking to Owen Benjamin about coming on to the podcast, but I don't know if that will happen here soon. Hopefully it will. We're in discussion. At any rate, though, I want to thank you all for tuning in to tonight's episode. We had a lot of people tuning in at various points and dropping in and dropping off. Real quick, I know I did this at the beginning of the show, but for those of you who came in later during the show, you can visit my website down here at thesamwhitfield.com, where you can find all my links to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. you can go to anchor.fm to subscribe to the audio podcast feed from iTunes or Google Play or wherever you get your podcast from. Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of podcast platforms, a couple of the Unbearables have told me that they're looking for the Whitfield Report podcast on Stitcher. And folks, for those of you who do use Stitcher, one of the old podcast feeds for the Whitfield Report is on Stitcher. But when I moved the podcast feed over to Anchor, the other feed stopped existing. So the one that is on Stitch right now, I don't even know if that one works. So if you try and play on Stitcher, it might not even work. It might not even play the existing episodes on there, but even if it doesn't, you won't be getting current episodes. So long story short, I will be submitting my most recent podcast feed to Stitcher, since I know that there's a demand for it. But in the meantime, just subscribe on iTunes or wherever else you get your podcast and your podcasts, and I'll be sure to continue distributing in the podcast feeds to more places as I find them. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you all have a happy Easter and a great week. And from all of us here at NGC Studios, have a good night, God bless, and God save this great nation.